Welcome to the Bigger Cash Flow podcast, where we interview business owners and real estate investors that share tips and tricks on how to grow your cash flow and reach financial freedom.
Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of the Bigger Cash Flow podcast. My name is Bo Kim, your host, and today we have an exciting episode with Sam Kwak. Sam is a serial entrepreneur and real estate investor who has come from humble beginnings. Immigrated from South Korea in 1999, the Kwak family only had $2,000 cash on hand and lived in a small one-bedroom apartment in Albany Park, Chicago. Fast forward to today, he has launched several different businesses and has authored a book titled Fire Your Boss. He and his brother own over 76 rental units and train entrepreneurs and small business owners on how to crush it in real estate investing and marketing. With that said, let's welcome Sam to the show. What's up, Sam?
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
Good. So excited to have you here.
Yeah.
I came across some of your YouTube videos about a year ago when one of my friends, actually my co-host Joe Kim, who couldn't be here today, unfortunately, he says hi, but he sent me a video about, the biggest scam in the world about, education and financial literacy and things like that. And I really resonated with that video and then started checking out more of your stuff. And you have a ton of great content. So I wanted to get you on the show here. So why don't we just dive right in, and can you speak to our listeners a little bit about yourself, your background, and what you're currently doing in the real estate game?
Sure. Yeah. So my brother and I started this business, real estate investing 5 years ago. So that was 2014. And I'm sure this is like the real estate investing Bible of all time, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. We've all read it, right? And this is like one of the things that really brought myself and many other individuals to a wake-up call. So it was 2014. We read the book. We're super excited. And I think all of us were when we first got started. And we were taking action, trying to find every single YouTube videos about real estate investing out there, and reading books, downloading free things. And along the way, taking action, going out there, putting deals together, or what we thought we were putting deals together, we ran across a mentor, and we hit a spot where our first year, we were still in college. We were still doing our classes. We were doing 15 credit hours a week. And obviously we felt a little frustrated. We felt a little impatient about not getting to our first deal right off the bat. So we ended up meeting a local mentor here in the area, and he had some 200 some doors. And we met with him, bought him lunch multiple times. We actually ended up working for this guy for free for a long period of time, whether it was social media. We helped him out with some marketing related things. And of course, we were shadowing him as much as possible. And one pivotal moment that pretty much changed everything was when we started to bring deals in front of this guy. And we were starting to bring deals that actually had some really good potential. So that's how the value exchange relationship started to happen. And I think it was late 2016, 2017. That's when things just kind of hit off the ground. Just one year we picked up 75 units. And ever since then, we've been just picking up projects after project. And if I have to go back and sort of filter down to two main things that made the biggest impact and the change and development for us, I'd have to say, the first thing that really changed the game for us is understanding and learning how to negotiate for owner financing. For those who don't know what that is, it's a concept where instead of having to go through a bank to get financing, we're instead having a conversation, a dialogue with the seller of a property, to where we're making an arrangement to make monthly payments to the seller, and we get the ownership right of the property. And of course, some people say, well, why would anyone do that? I like to say desperate people do desperate things. The better way to say this, the more, effective way to say this, is people who have challenges are willing to do anything to solve their problems, right? So owner financing just happens to be one of the things that can help individuals with certain problems that they may have. in regards to real estate investing. The second thing that helped us a lot to like catapult to 75 units like this, I remember like we understood how to negotiate for owner financing. That was the easy part, because once you get through some practice, you'll get it. But the second part that really got us to where we felt stuck was not enough capital. We were negotiating these deals into owner financing. That's great, but a lot of these sellers still wanted to have us do a down payment, whether it's 10% or 5%, 20%. So when you're buying a 36-unit apartment building that's $1.5 million, yeah, 10% is quite a bit. That's $150,000 that you're going to come up with. So I remember feeling really stuck. I was kind of bummed out because we were hitting a wall. Like we were doing really, really well. It's kind of like when you're like, when you see success happening, but all of a sudden it just kind of crumbles because of this one thing. That one thing was lack of capital. And every single seller that we were dealing with were asking us to do some sort of down payment. Of course, being 23, 24 at the time, I mean, we didn't have $150,000. So a lot of you guys may know this TV show Shark Tank, right? If you don't, please come out of the rock, because the world is better when you come out of the rock. But there's a show in ABC, the Shark Tank. You got your main shark characters like Mark Cuban, Kevin O'Leary, Damon John, right? All these multi-million billionaires that are really successful. And I remember watching this particular episode, and I remember this because I don't own a TV, so I don't watch Shark Tank off my TV, but I was traveling this particular time, and I was in my hotel just flickering through TV, and I saw Shark Tank. I'm like, oh, perfect. I don't have to watch Housewives or whatever the show I was watching. And so I was watching Shark Tank, and I've seen Shark Tank before, and I saw a contestant walk in, very nicely dressed, had a little briefcase that he was holding. He walks in, and he says, hey, my name is such and such. Hello, Sharks. My name is, whatever. And he said, I don't have a business experience. I've never started a business. So a lot of you guys listening as W-2 employees, and you guys have a full-time day job or a professional, this story will definitely resonate with you. But this gentleman walks in and says, hey, I don't have any business experience. I never ran a business. But I'm here to ask for $100,000 for 20% of my business idea. And here I thought, I'm like, man, this guy's gonna get roasted by Kevin O'Leary, right? I can totally imagine Kevin O'Leary and Mark Cuban. They're like, dude, you don't have a business experience. What are you doing here? Like, go home. That's totally what I was thinking off the top of my head. And this guy starts going to share his pitch. And the longer he pitched, I was starting to realize maybe I'm wrong about this guy, because he sounded really professional. You can definitely tell that this is not his first rodeo as far as public speaking. The third thing is he had documents, he had business plan, he had data. And in fact, later I find out that he was in this industry for a very long time. He just hasn't he didn't have his own business. He was working for other companies and things like that. But he had immense amount of data. He had market research. He knew what he was talking about. Like you could not argue with this guy. So at the end, Kevin O'Leary and this contestant, they were going back and forth. And every time Kevin threw a question at him, like this guy got it. Like he had it in the back of his tongue. It was ready to go. And my jaw literally dropped when Kevin O'Leary is like, okay, I'll give you $100,000 for 20% equity of this proposed company. And I'm like, holy smokes, right? Like, but at the same time, a light bulb went on in my head. So wait a minute, if this dude here was able to go into a group of sharks, never had a business, never ran a business, let's put it that way, and never had a single revenue as a business owner, is it possible that I could translate this process into also raising capital for real estate? And a light bulb went off my head. I'm like, okay, so if I can be this guy, I can model this guy, I dress like this guy, I sound like this guy, and I walk into a room of billionaires and walk away with a $100,000 check, I think I'll be set. So Daniel and I went to work. We started working on our pitch. We read a book called Pitch Anything. Phenomenal book. You guys should all read it, by Oren Klaff, which, by the way, I bought my paper copy for $2. So if you can't spare $2, but you go do coffee runs in Starbucks, you have a problem. But go get a copy. So that, and also a few other things. We took a bunch of sales training programs, public speaking, That's huge. And, we started dressing better, and we understood how to create business plans and also executive summaries to formulate a deal. And the better we got at articulating our data, our research, and also how we make sense of the deal, it almost seemed like these wealthier individuals wanted to work with us, right? It's almost like Kevin Leary wanting to work with this guy who, though he didn't have any business experience, but he had a lot of data going at him. Like, that this guy is reliable, despite the fact that he doesn't have a whole lot of experience. So when you guys are faced with this fact that, man, no one wants to lend me money, or man, no one wants to work with me. Well, first of all, one of the things you have to do is you got to prove yourself. That's number one. But number two is you have to understand what Daniel likes to call it, the value creation formula. Like, how do you create value in a conversation? And there's a phenomenal book that I'm actually reading right now, and I think it translates really well as to what I'm trying to say. It's called The Go-Giver. Phenomenal book, and I got to thank Matt for this one because he sold it to me. There's a book called Go-Giver, where if you feel like, man, like no one wants to work with me, no one wants to lend me money, no one wants to be my money partner. Everywhere I look, all the hard money lenders don't want to lend to me, or my private lenders don't want to lend to me. Read the book, because you'll understand that when you make your conversation about yourself or about your business, you'll never get the deal. But if you almost always make the conversation about them and what they want out of the transaction and relationship, you'll almost certainly have a higher degree of chance of attracting people that have money, first of all, and that have incredible amount of value to share with you. So if you guys feel like, man, like I don't know where to go from here, no one wants to lend me money, or I don't have any capital, I don't have any basis or foundation as to how to build my real estate investing business, don't give up. The number one thing that I see, the challenge that I see with people is the mentality. And what I mean by that is the mentality of a taker versus a mentality of a giver. If you want to become a successful entrepreneur, you have to have the mentality of a giver. I've never seen anyone succeed coming from a mentality of a taker. Like all of us have a taker in our life. Like, hey, give me this, give me that, right? They're asking you questions like, hey, Bo, can I have this, this, and this, and this? Or can you give me this, and this, and this? Instead, if you have the mentality of a giver, you're asking, hey, Bo, what is your number one problem that you need help solve with? Or who do you want me to get you in touch with to help you solve that problem? So the moment you switch your mindset to becoming a genuine giver, like you don't expect anything in return when you give, that's when you know you're going to hit a stride. Like when you make it about them and put money on second, okay, if you believe that money is a byproduct by helping other individuals, you're going to be far ahead of a lot of people trying to break into this business, for sure.
There was a ton of keywords that, I was just taking notes because I want to unpack that one by one. And some of the keywords that came up to mind was, you mentioned value exchange. Right. You were talking about not me, but them, right? So I wrote down WIIFT. I want you guys to remember what's in it for them, not me, right? Because the same thing when I deal with private money lenders, they want to know, hey, tell me the return of my capital before the return on my capital. So those are great tips that Sam just shared with us. And it reminds me of the quote by Zig Ziglar that says, you can get anything you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want first. So let's take a step back. Okay. So let's go to, younger Sam, came from Korea, you immigrated, you came from humble beginnings. Tell me how, other than you picking up the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, was there anything else that kind of shifted your focus into real estate specifically?
Yeah. So to get to that, I have to share a little bit of my faith story. So prior to me becoming this real estate investor that somehow, man, gracious Lord, led me to, but I was a full-time nightclub DJ. I was DJing for different weddings. I was DJing for birthday parties. Number one, it was a train wreck, being in that industry, by the way. And gosh, I love the people. I have so much compassion for the people because I want the better things for them. The challenge was I was hanging out with the wrong people, and it wasn't the best influence in my life, number one. And number two, I knew that looking at long term, like, once I get married, start a family, do I really want my kids or my wife seeing me come back like 2, 3 a.m. in the morning? Like, is that the life that I want? And at the same time, it was towards maybe 2013, 2014. I was starting to come back from my faith, to my faith a bit more in a stronger way. And part of the reason why was because my parents left to go back to Korea to live there. And pretty much my brother and I were alone to be our own financial support. So that brought its own challenges because now we have to pay rent and we have to do all these things that being an adult, honestly, like I felt challenged for sure, being that now we have to provide for ourselves. But that challenge gave an opportunity for me to go back to my faith and to rely on for God, rely on my faith for me to really walk to transcend the challenge. So part of it was I remember praying this really silent prayer. It was almost a scary prayer at the time. I wasn't sure if I was ready to give up my DJing yet, but I remember praying to God saying, "Hey, God, if you want to take this DJ thing away from me to give me something better, I'm all for it." Right? I didn't pray that again. I was like, man, if I pray a second time, he's definitely gonna take it away.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna pray once, and let's see what happens. But sure enough, a couple months later, my former church youth pastor approaches me saying, "Hey, Sam, I see that you read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. I have this real estate investing group that you should definitely come and hang out with." And that's actually how I found my mentor. So yeah, it's really interesting. It was through my spiritual obedience that I was able to kind of surrender my DJing career, which thank God I did. Holy smokes, if I would have stuck with that, man, I don't know what would have been the result of my being. But that's honestly how I found real estate investing. And to give you guys kind of more of a deeper layer story. But yeah, that's sort of how I guess my adulthood can kind of be summarized in that quick story back in 2014, 2013 period.
Awesome. Yeah, that was deep. I love it. I love that story.
Right.
So let's kind of dive in a little bit more into your real estate deals. From the time when you kind of started in the beginning, and then you mentioned that, you exchange values in terms of finding good deals for your mentor, working for him for free. Tell me the timeline from, when you got started to buying your first deal, and what was that journey like?
So 2014 is when we got started, and we really honestly struggled for 2 years. So come to the grips of where and how to get started. And here's a story that might be encouraging, and I think it'll give you also perspective for those who are struggling with this idea. Like, man, I haven't done a deal yet. I'm a couple months in, or you might be like, man, I'm 2 hours into this business. I haven't made $1 million yet. So here's a story, and it's kind of fitting because Bo and I are both Asians. So if you guys ever tried growing a bamboo tree, you guys will understand this. But when you start to grow a bamboo tree at its very infancy stage, you're going to need to water the bamboo tree a lot every single day. Bamboo tree takes a lot of water. So you're literally going to water that thing every single day, and you're going to be disciplined at it. And for the first 3 to 5 years, the bamboo tree doesn't even grow an inch. It just kind of sits there and just takes up water. But what's interesting is the more you keep watering every single day for 3 to 5 years, and usually on the 3rd or the 5th year, the bamboo tree will grow approximately 60 feet in that one short given time. But the question now becomes, well, how long did it take for the bamboo tree to grow 60 feet? Some of you guys may say, well, it took a couple of weeks because you had to keep watering it to get to that point. My argument is no, it actually took you 3 to 5 years because the first 2 to 4 years is what it took for that bamboo tree to grow 60 feet. So for me, it was a very similar concept where the 2 years, nothing was happening. I was grinding, I was hustling, I was putting time in. And all my friends were like, dude, you haven't even made a single money yet. Why are you still spending money on books and programs and seminars? And I'm like, no, this is going to work. I believe in this. Right. And part of me also thought, if I'm going to go through problems in life, might as well pick the problems. Right. If I'm going to go, life is going to have problems no matter what, whether you're rich, you're poor, you're busy, you're not busy, life is going to have problems, but life does give you the option to pick problems. So I said to myself, you know what? If life is going to have problems, might as well have a problem that's actually worth fighting for and waiting for. So 2 to 3 years, we struggled until like third year, about late 2016, 2017. That's when it just like all hit. And all of a sudden that 2017, I think we made 130,000 in revenue. And the previous year, we only made 30,000. So we went from like $30,000 in revenue in 2016. In 2017, we made 130,000. 2018, we ended with 175,000. And then, 2018, we ended with $250,000, 250,000, because I wasn't counting other revenue. And this year, we're projected for $1 million gross. So guys, like for those who've been doing this or been trying to enter into this real estate investing space for a couple of months, keep at it. Keep watering that bamboo. It'll grow.
Watering that bamboo. I love it. You got to make a shirt.
Mm-hmm. Water my bamboo. Yeah.
In other words, it's like, sharpening your axe, right? Because if you are a W-2 worker, you aren't going to hit home runs. It's going to be a linear path, right? Mm-hmm. But if you're an entrepreneur, like, Sam is, it seems like it's not growing, but then boom, bring you 70 units or
like that.
Exponential. So it takes time, but if you stick with it, grit, persistence, I think those are the key words that come to mind.
Yeah. And I have another tip for you guys who are W-2, especially if you work from 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 type of thing. One of my good mentors said, your 9 to 5 should be what's called your income producing IPA time, income producing time, right? So those are the time where you got to feed yourself, you got to put food on your table, especially if you have a family. You don't want to miss out on that. But my mentor said from 6 to 9, I think he said 6 to 8 or 6 to 9, he makes the family time. He invested into his family, and literally from 9 to midnight, he's working on his long-term business idea, or for you guys will be real estate investing. So what could you do between 9 to 12? Well, you can go and, if you guys are wholesaling, build your buyer's list. If you guys are looking to do a flip, you guys can do your analysis, sending out emails, making offers. So there's literally no excuse for why you can't put in the time. If you have 3 hours, put that 3 hours in. That's going to equal to, if you're doing it for the weekend or the weekdays, that's 15 hours every week times 4. That's 45 hours in a month. Being conservative here. And then, if you stretch that out in a year, you're putting a lot of hours in. So don't underestimate the consistency of that 9 to 12 work period. Or if you can put more in, it's great. But don't underestimate that, because it adds up.
I love it.
It definitely adds up. Yeah.
So I have to ask you, now you mentioned on the show the word mentor about a dozen times. A lot of investors who are starting out, they reach out to me and say, hey, Bo, I don't know what to do to get started. Like, what's the best way to get started? And I also was lucky enough to have like an informal mentor who I just reached out to on Bigger Pockets. And he had about, 30 units and took me under his wing and showed me how to underwrite deals and whatnot.
Yeah.
So can you tell our listeners the value of a mentor, those who are trying to do it themselves? What are some pitfalls and challenges that they might run into?
Yeah. So my biggest thing, we actually consulted with a PhD of education in this. And we were trying to figure out, like, how do we transform someone who's like completely amateur and turn them into like an all-star, MVP real estate investor, right? And after having a little bit of dialogue with this PhD in education, he was saying that a lot of what you guys are doing is information mining. You guys are just getting information. And what sucks about information is that only like the top 5% who like really, they're designed to absorb information really well. They can do well with just information alone. But if you just rely on information alone, you're actually missing out the 2/3 of the pie that makes up for the success rate that you guys are going to have. So Daniel and I came to a conclusion. Yes, information is needed. It's very important. But the two other parts that are super crucial is, you need some sort of immersive experience. You need to be able to engage with somebody. So that's 1 and 2. So you need engagement and you need immersion. So immersion is you got to be part of a community of people that are actually doing the things that you want to do. So it's kind of like, if you want to be really good at swimming, hang out with swimmers. If you want to be really good at playing soccer, hang out with soccer players, like good soccer players. If you want to be a drug addict, hang out with drug addicts. It's pretty easy. if you want to be a professional real estate investor, hang out with real estate investors. And that also includes engagement. So just hanging out and standing there isn't going to cut it. You're going to have to engage with them, right? Ask questions, test your ideas out. And I have a guy right now that I'm mentoring, and I'm mentoring him other things. And he's working on how to build a website. I told him, hey, dude, just build a website, build it. And he's like, I don't know how to do it. Like, just build it and I'll come back and critique you. Right. So it's one of those things where, yes, I'm a huge proponent of having a mentor, just because A, it saves you time, and B, I'm a big believer in leverage. So leverage your relationships to be where you can learn from other people's mistakes. Yeah, you want to learn from mistakes, but don't try to reinvent the wheel, right? I mean, how stupid would it sound? You have a friend that you care about, right? All of us do. And you have a friend that comes in and says, Bo, like, I spent the last 23 years working on this. You want to know what it is? And you're like, what is it? Like, is it really important? Like, did you figure out how to cure cancer? And he goes like, no, man. I figured out how to make the perfect wheel. I'm like, what? Are you serious? Like, dude, like, we figured this out like millions of years ago. What are you doing? So, I mean, I know that was more of an exaggerated example, but that's exactly how I see somebody trying to figure this out on their own. Like, dude, just come and ask me, right? And I'll show you, as far as what I know. But mentorship is big. It's one of the reasons why Daniel and I, first of all, we spend crap ton of money on networking. And we go to events and we pay for the top dollar seats. And you know why? And people think like, I mean, why would you want to pay $10,000 when you can get the same exact content for $50? Well, it's not really the price that I'm worried about or the content that I'm worried about. I'm focused on the relationship. And the psychology behind it is if I pay $10,000 to go to buy a seat for a conference, and I know the guy next to me spent $10,000 for the seat, hello, like, hey, what do you do, right? Like, what business do you run? And clearly, if he had the means to pay $10,000 for the seat, this guy knows something that I probably want to know. So I'm not paying $10,000 for the content. If I just wanted the content, I would go sit way in the back for $50, right? I'm paying $10,000 for relationships. And I know that relationship can easily turn into millions of dollars of revenue, or, who knows, a priceless relationship that may turn into another business idea or another product launch. Yep.
It's funny. I go to a lot of real estate conferences, and I also went to the TEDx conference recently. And it's funny because, there's, like you mentioned, there's different tiers of seating. And for this real estate boot camp, it's like a multifamily boot camp. And I was invited to be a guest of one of my buddies. So I was actually in the VIP seating. Yep. And, the attitude of the people in the front is totally different.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
They're never late. They show, if it's at 9, they show up at 8:30. And if you look to the back, it's like half empty. Yeah. And then they show up an hour later or something like that. And that's might not be always the case, but I think it goes to show price is what you pay and value is what you get. What you're saying is like, you hit the nail on the head in terms of you're not just taking it for face value or just for the price of the ticket. That's just the admission, but you're paying for like the networking and to learn more, because let's just say you learn 1% more and that translates into $100,000, then you get 10 times your investment.
Right. Absolutely.
So let's talk about, your company and what you're kind of showing other investors. Can you tell us about what you're doing day to day? I know you have a great video on YouTube that talks about the HELOC strategy, and I think it has over 1 million views. And
we're at 2.4 million now. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So give us like a 10,000 foot overview in terms of what a HELOC is for our listeners who might not know, and how they can implement the strategy not only in their business, but in real estate investing. Yeah.
So this HELOC strategy, I can't claim that I've invented it. It's actually a strategy that was originally sort of discovered in Australia. It's actually, in fact, reported, I think 1 out of 4 Australians are using it, which is kind of interesting. But so HELOC stands for Home Equity Line of Credit. So it's kind of like having a credit card that's attached to your home's equity, which is kind of cool, right? So anytime you go spend money off your HELOC, it's like taking a piece of your drywall and trading it for money. That's how I imagine in my head, at least. But
my wife would kill me if I do that for
yeah, right. Like
start taking drywall out.
Yeah. Hey, honey, we got to buy dinner. I'm sorry. Like this is how it works. But what's great about HELOC is that you can tap into the equity of your of a property. So even if it's your investment property, I know there's a lot of myth that says that people are saying, well, it's impossible to get a HELOC on an investment property. That's simply not true. There's actually ways to get it. Banks do offer it. You just need to be super bankable, meaning you got to have a lot of assets, you got to have a lot of experience. Obviously, you have to have a really good risk profile, meaning you have to have some skin in the game. And a lot of the HELOCs that are given out for investment properties are typically lower in terms of loan to value because of the degree of risk. But if you can actually get a HELOC on your owner occupied, meaning your own primary residence. And what you can do with the HELOC is amazing. One of the things that I teach a lot is using the HELOC to pay off an amortized loan, such as a mortgage. And I've seen a lot of my clients able to pay off their mortgages in third of the time, 30 interest on average. Okay, some people it takes longer, some people may take them even quicker. So you can do that. But the bigger thing is that once they pay off their debt or once they use that strategy to pay off their mortgage, now they have a free and clear property that they can go ahead, use that resource to either make a down payment for the next property they're buying for a rental, or you can split, right? You can do like 5 different down payments on 5 different investment properties to be able to go create cash flow and create to create financial stability. So that's one of the strategies I teach. And we call it the debt acceleration strategy. And a lot of people that come to ask me that question is mainly wanting to pay off their mortgage, but usually that person and I have a conversation about, okay, what are you going to do after you pay the mortgage off or pay off your debt? Let's go and start thinking about retirement. Let's get you some cash flows.
I personally use a HELOC to buy 2 extra rentals, and then I borrow it, pay back my HELOC, and then I do more. Are there any downsides to the HELOC or using a business line of credit?
Yes. So, business line of credit, if you do it the right way, there isn't much. As far as the HELOC strategy goes, if you're doing it on your primary residence, it can mess with your credit because now a line of credit is a revolving credit. So it's going to start to affect your utilization rate, which if you understand credit, your FICO score, your Fair Isaac score, your utilization is about 35% of your FICO score rating. So utilization rate, for those who don't know, let's say if you have a $10,000 credit card and you use $4,000 of it, you have a 40% utilization rate. So when you have a HELOC and you're maxing out your HELOC all the time because you're doing the strategy or you're buying more properties, you're gonna start to see your credit score kind of do this all the time. But the way that I look at it, your credit score is a tool, right? And the question to be asked is, do you want like a perfect 800 or 950 credit score, or would you want to have cash flow coming in because you got your credit that you're utilizing? So a lot of people are like, some people are like, oh my gosh, I don't want to lose my 950 perfect credit score. Well, that's great, but you're not generating cash flow. It's kind of like having a shiny hammer and you're not doing anything with it. So you kind of have to prioritize, do I want to focus on my goals of creating more revenue and creating more cash flow and doing that? Or do I want to just have this perfect, nice and pretty 950 credit score trophy?
Yeah. That makes sense. And just to add on that, Sam talks about a lot of good strategies like private lending, owner finance, and using your HELOC. So make sure, foundationally you have a great deal and then utilize these strategies to make it even better.
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
So, we're getting to the near end of our show, and I was wondering, do you have any advice for your younger self in high school, looking back? It hasn't been that long. You're still pretty young, but knowing what you know now, would you have done anything differently? I know you have a great take on the educational system and whether they have to go to college.
If you're in high school, or you're about to enter college, which by the way, college isn't for everybody, and I think we all know that. Sort of try everything that you want. That's only one of the main ways you can figure out who you are. When I was in high school, I figured out I was really good at marketing. I was really good at doing Photoshops, building websites, building sales funnels, and knowing how to do presentations. I realized that was my thing. And the only way that I knew that was my thing is I loved going on talent shows. I loved performing. Sports wasn't necessarily my thing. I figured that out really quick after losing like 10 times in wrestling, or getting sacked or getting tackled in football. And I had a hard time catching a football. So that was another thing. So I knew sports wasn't for me, but I knew I was really good at by the end of my high school year, I ended up being chief editor for our news network. So one of the reasons why I'm really good at YouTube videos and I know how to edit videos. So your high school time, your younger self, before 20 is a great time to go and develop those skill set on social media, marketing. Like you literally have all the free time in the world. Like once you hit 23, 24, you start to feel the pain of having to pay bills and you got responsibilities. And like once you have kids, that goes sideways. So when you're in your teens, that is literally the best time to acquire new skills, learn everything. Like don't waste a single time like just messing around.
I love that.
Yeah.
Try lots of things. And then number two, don't place too much emphasis on what other people think.
Oh yeah.
They might not be there in 10 years anyway. I love that.
Yeah. And here's the cool part. And here's the amazing part. If you're worried about what other people think of you, the crazy, this is going to trip you out. The crazy thing is they're also thinking about the same way about you. They're like, man, what if Sam thinks I'm crazy? And here you are thinking, what if this guy thinks I'm crazy? Right? We all think that we're like, hey, this guy's gonna think I'm crazy, or this guy thinks I'm crazy. I mean, we all live in this fear, right? We got to stop it, right? So don't worry about what other people think. And if you really internalize that, oh man, you're gonna
Sky's the limit. Yeah. No, I love that. Well, before we wrap up the show, I have to ask you, this has been on the back of my mind because you mentioned Shark Tank and I love that show. Who's your favorite shark?
So I definitely say so personality wise, I jive really well with Mr. Wonderful, Kevin Leary.
Okay.
But I love Robert's character. I love Robert's enthusiasm.
He definitely has that personal touch,
Yeah, definitely does.
That's awesome. Okay, so this was a great show. Where can our listeners learn more about you, your brother, your business, and get in contact with you? Yeah,
so if you Google us, the Kwak brothers, I mean, we're pretty much everywhere. YouTube is a big thing. So if you guys want to find us on YouTube, just search the Kwak brothers, TheKWAK You'll find all sorts of free videos and podcasts that we release. We're actually going to be starting April. We're going to do video a day. So if you want to catch us there, you'll find us there. There's a lot of videos there. So yeah.
Awesome. So I'll have all that and more in the show notes for this episode. So if you thought that was helpful, please do us a favor and leave us a review on iTunes. We'll catch you right back here next week for another exciting episode of the Bigger Cash Flow Podcast. Thank you for listening to the Bigger Cash Flow Podcast. Please remember that opinions of the guests are their own, and nothing on this show should be considered personal or professional advice. Please consult your tax, legal, or financial advisor for personal advice that fit your unique situation. See you next time.